everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Geneva Dialogue Talks, a series of expert conversations on cyber stability, roles and responsibilities of stakeholders. Cyber strategies are often judged by how ambitious they sound, but also by how they hold up under pressure. And today, in this episode, we take a closer look at Switzerland's current cyber strategy, how it is being shaped, how it responds to a rapidly shifting geopolitical and technological landscape, and what it really takes to turn strategic intent into day-to-day practice. I think it also must be noted that Switzerland, as probably many other countries these days, operates in a uniquely complex environment, balancing security, economic openness, innovation, neutrality, while navigating also uncertainty, interdependence, and fast-moving global developments. So, how are these priorities set when these principles come into tension? Who is involved in making those calls, and how much room is there to adapt as risks continue to evolve? My name is Anastasia Kazakova. I'm a Cyber Diplomacy Knowledge Fellow at DiploFoundation and Geneva Dialogue Project Coordinator, and it's a great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today to discuss all of these questions. Maya Bundt, multiple board member, cyber governance expert, chair of the steering committee for the implementation of the Swiss National Cyber Strategy, and a member of the Geneva Dialogue Steering Committee. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much, Nastia. And thank you for having me for this important topic.
Thank you so much as well for your time, for being here. Before we start actually discussing the changes and how the strategy is being evolving, probably you could give us a brief overview of the current Swiss cyber strategy. And the key question would be, how does it differ from the previous versions?
Sure, thanks for that question. So I think I would like to start with why cybersecurity is crucial nowadays, right? And actually that's the raison d'être for any cyber strategy. So it's crucial for the national security, that's for one, but it is also a prerequisite for digitalization and running a business. I always say without cybersecurity, there is no business. It's also a central factor for the rights of people, if you're talking about personal data and data protection. But it is also an opportunity for any country and for Switzerland specifically as a business and a research location. And to capture all that, the Swiss National Cyber Strategy, the NCS, is quite broad and speaks to several stakeholder groups, right? It speaks to the general population, to the business community, critical infrastructure, public authorities, the administration itself, but also to international and non-governmental organizations. And I think one of the important things about this Swiss National Cyber Strategy, it's built up on principles. And the first one is it's risk-based. So it doesn't touch everything, and there has to be basically a risk assessment to see, where does it set in. It's also a principle that cybersecurity is a joint task. So it is a collaboration between the society, the business community, and the state. And the state has a subsidiary and partnership role. So it's not that the state does everything and brings cybersecurity to everybody, but it really has a partnership role and subsidiary role in that case. And the other principle is transparency. So we want to be transparent about where we are and what we're doing. So having said that, that's all around the strategy. The current strategy has 5 strategic goals. The first one is empowerment. The second one is secure and available digital services and infrastructure. The third strategic goal is effective cyber attack detection, prevention, management, and defense. The fourth strategic goal is effective combating and prosecution of cybercrime. And the fifth strategic goal is leading role in international cooperation. Now, underneath those 5 strategic goals lie 17 measures that are currently being implemented. And I can only prompt you to have a look at the website of the Swiss National Cybersecurity Center. The strategy is there. It has less than 40 pages, and I think it's quite an easy read. and you get a good overview of what's in it. But Nastya, you also asked what's different from the previous version. And I think one important difference is that it doesn't have an end date. All the other strategies, and that was in line with basically a lot of business strategies that we see out there, right, was a 5-year strategy. You have a start date, you have an end date, and you have the strategic goals in between. This strategy has no end date, so it's continuous, which also brings with it that we can continue look at it and see if it needs review. And I think that is a positive aspect in this sense, as right now we have an extremely fast changing environment. You mentioned that in your initial words, Nastya, and I think this is therefore necessary that we take a hard look at the strategy in between to see, is it fit for purpose? Does it need changing? And it shouldn't be changed on an ongoing matter, because it's a strategy, so it's long term. But if there is a review needed, then in this setup it can be done. And one additional change to the last strategy implementations is the role of the steering committee. So now we have this external kind of steering committee that looks at the strategy implementation. So to oversee the strategy implementation, are we doing the right things? Are we doing, what's the timing of it? Are there any, white spots? Do we need to prioritize different things? That is one work that we're doing. The second one is the further development of the strategy. So this is what we are currently working on as a steering committee. And also, and I mentioned that in the beginning, that is one of the principles is transparency. So each year, the steering committee is tasked to present a report to the federal administration, but also to the public to see where we are. And maybe one last mention of the steering committee. This steering committee is put together by experts from the administration, but also by people who represent the business community, social society, and academia. So it's a broad body looking at the strategy from these different points of view.
Sort of a whole of a society approach being embedded into
Yes.
how it's been shaped and implemented. Interesting. Thank you so much. From what you've shared, I think we could clearly see already those ingredients of success. So the 5 strategic goals, 17 measures, there's no end date, which is really interesting because I think to me personally, it sounds like continuous framework, but at the same time, it really could help ease the tension from being pressured to develop each time new strategy if you have the end date, for instance, for 4 or 5 days. So I think it may really help to give the priorities and kind of to ease you off from this tension and focus on the more operational probably tasks.
Yeah, I think it also, Nastya, if I can
Yeah,
interrupt you here quickly, I think it also gives you this certainty that we're not going to change the whole
yeah,
strategy, each cycle, but it's something that has stability. But yes, even in that stability, it needs to be looked at, it needs to be reviewed, right? So I
yeah.
think you have probably the boast of best worlds in this setup, I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And the external steering committee, which you highlighted, has a multi-stakeholder nature because it includes the government, but it also includes the multi-stakeholders, the experts representing the business community, academia, and are there any technical experts as well, right?
There are technical experts in that group of people. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely.
Really interesting. So maybe we could zoom into this because there are many different stakeholders and different interests as we could think about this. So curious how the trade-offs have been managed into the process of how strategy is being developed in practice when security, economic interest, openness, and neutrality come into tension, basically. So if you could just unpack a little bit how specifically priorities are set and trade-offs are managed between all of these experts.
Yeah, so first of all, there is or has been in the past, and I think that's a good set up for future strategy development processes. There always has been a broad reach out in Switzerland to the communities. And I'm saying communities specifically because it's not only one, the technical community that you're looking at is not only the national defense community, but it's really a broad approach and just very, very hands-on. So there have always been several workshops where experts from all these different areas have been invited. They come together. Switzerland is not that big, so you can usually come together, in one place, which makes for good discussions. And then the ideas for the strategy are being discussed. New ideas are put on the table as well. There are associations, there are business associations as well as technical associations. So really the different stakeholders that then also have to live with the strategy in the end, right? They come together and give input and contribute to the development of the strategy. Obviously, now the National Cybersecurity Center is at the heart of the of developing and also implementing the strategies. So they do all the kind of organization and the writing, etc. But the approach is really also in the definition in the very beginning is very participative and inclusive, and I think that makes sense in a strategy that is so broad because then you have much more buy-in from the stakeholders if they can, if they see themselves that they can contribute to the strategy development.
Thank you. But I also cannot but ask about the uncertainty and the fast changing geopolitics that we're observing. How do I guess experts deal with all of this while being part of this really important work to lay out and implement the strategy? And I guess one of the ingredients would be really to ensure that different expertise isn't presented in the room, right? Different perspectives, so we can really in a calm environment, listen to different views and find the best solution. But if you could also maybe to share other sort of ingredients as you see, how do decision makers account for uncertainty and this really turbulent geopolitical environment that we currently in?
Absolutely. I think here you have several different aspects that you need to take into account. So if developing a strategy, that obviously this strategy was developed 2022, was released 2023, came into practice there. Was a different time. Now in 2026, we are in a different environment altogether. And so the strategy is currently, shows whether it's resilient against changes out there. And actually, a strategy should be in a way, it should be written a little bit agnostic of short-term happenings in the world. There could be technology developments, but that could also be geopolitical developments. Having said that, the work is ongoing of the review of the strategy, and that is actually one of the aspects that we as a steering committee have said we would like to challenge. So the geopolitical reality that we are facing right now, what does it mean for the strategy? And is our strategy fit for purpose in such an environment? So yes, the strategy should be built and written in a way that it can weather these storms, left and right storms, and upheavals, etc. But it is also important that we challenge it, right, and see whether we are focusing on the right topics here. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah. I really like how you formulated being agnostic for short-term developments. I think
Mhm.
it's a really good sort of reminder to all of us today because so much happening and the whole January feels like it's been 3 months already, but it's just the beginning of the year and being too responsive to every news and development can be really sort of distracting you from the priorities that have been set in initially. So I like how you highlighted this.
And I think here in that context, you have to weigh, right? If you're
Yeah,
too too high level, too agnostic, you might not say anything, right? And you might
yeah,
not have the guidance that you need in a strategy. But there you have to find the right level in which to actually organize your thoughts, because as you say, it's really important that we can really work and implement and not jump left and right all the time. This is what
yeah.
the strategy is for. It should give us our North Star, our guiding light, and we are moving towards that goal.
Yeah, indeed. And I can't, but I at some time I can try to imagine how difficult it can be under the pressure of so many again the interests and someone else's priorities. Indeed, that's
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
must be really also difficult emotional challenge just to really focus on what's really important and how this will play out at least in a short and medium term.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I wanted also to probably zoom into the both challenges that you touched on a little bit and opportunities. So looking ahead, maybe you would help us to outline the key biggest challenges that you see, but also whether you see concrete opportunities with the strategy for Switzerland to add value and lead by example for other countries that also probably currently thinking how to adapt the existing strategies or develop new ones to respond to the global events.
On the main challenges, on some challenges, I can give you three keywords, and everybody can then, let their imagination fly on these keywords. I would say challenges are money, focus, and politics.
Mm-hmm.
And on the opportunity side, or what makes a difference, I think we already talked about this. I think this is this joint task for the different stakeholders, and having them on board going into the same direction, that's really an opportunity which brings all the stakeholders in Switzerland along the way. And if we are looking at that a little bit more in detail, if you're talking about opportunities, that is actually part of the vision of this cyber strategy. It says that opportunities of digitalization should be leveraged, right? So we basically can make use of those opportunities. Without cybersecurity, we cannot do that. But I personally think it goes beyond that. I think there are opportunities here that kind of touch Switzerland as a whole. If you're looking at us where we are, we're a small country, we're neutral, we have a very long tradition in diplomacy. There is a high degree of legal certainty in the
Mm-hmm.
country. There is a lot of innovation power. We've been named most innovative country for several years in a row now. We have highly educated experts in cybersecurity and cyber policy. And I think this lends to us also as an opportunity to position ourselves in the international context, potentially as a home for organizations that are central for the functioning and security of the internet, on top of these international organizations like the UN, etc., as to play a strong role in international cyber diplomacy and mediation, where Switzerland also has some experience in that, and also as a leading role in development of cybersecurity technology with our universities and the excellent educational system that we have. So there are several kind of opportunities that we can actually in an environment that is insecure, and getting, more insecure by the moment, I think there are great opportunities for a country like Switzerland in there.
Mm. Sort of reminder of the already existing strengths that the country already has that may really help just to better understand what you rely on to deal with these challenges.
Absolutely. I see it a little bit. You know that I come from insurance. I've spent a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time in insurance, and wherever there's a new risk, there's an opportunity for
Mm-hmm.
insurance, right? And I think in this context is like you can say if there is, the we have strengths in Switzerland that we can play to kind of really position us as a nation, as a country, as a point of business and a point
Mm-hmm.
of research and a point of innovation as well.
Yeah, a bit philosophical comment, but I think it's really important. It's just probably the success to this resilience. Looking at every crisis and a challenge as also as the other side of the coin, which is opportunity, as you mentioned, which could be an interesting point for further growth, even though it can be painful and scary at the very beginning.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Again, I wanted to roll back a bit to the stakeholders because I really admire this multi-stakeholder composition of the work on the strategy, its development, and also the implementation. And you mentioned that there's so many different actors being involved: federal authorities, cantons, the private sector, including small and medium enterprises, and civil society broadly. And what we also discussed within Geneva Dialogue, the sometimes both the challenge and opportunity probably is that responsibilities are not always clear and they distributed among all of the stakeholders. The task quite often is to better understand how these responsibilities are distributed, who's responsible for what, and how cyber risks basically also spill across sectors and borders and all those stakeholders. So my question would be, how do you see the approach to ensure that a strategy is not only understood but also actually applied when, again, those responsibilities sometimes can be at first blurry. It's not always clear who's really important, who's really responsible for a particular area.
Again, I think it's a complex question, and there are probably several different answers that I could give. Let me start with one view. I have already said in the beginning, the state supports. It does not do well, they do, but in general, it supports, and cybersecurity is a role for everybody. So I think that is in one of the principles we need to bring that back, and that is really important. It's not the state that is responsible for the cybersecurity of a certain company, of a certain person. They should support it and they enable it, but everybody is it's everybody's role to make themselves as cyber secure as needed. And,
Mhm.
and I think that is important in this context. That means also that already everybody is or should be involved. Now, how does that work in practice? Does everybody know? Here we have one the first strategic goal is called awareness, and in that context, it's there are measures that run towards making the general public aware of the risks and what they can do. But it's also making businesses, for example, aware. We have, to this date, unfortunately, in some areas of, especially smaller companies, still a lack of cybersecurity measures that are implemented to safeguard the organization, right? And here, this awareness measure that should support or help in getting to everybody in the end. But also we have true collaboration examples. There are these cybersecurity centers that are brought about by the industry, so it's per industry or per sector, you could say, and it's like an association where the sector itself organizes itself to help themselves, but in combination with the state resources, right? So I think one of the oldest one is the FSCSC, that's the Financial Sector Cybersecurity Center. That is, in my view, a good example of how industry and state can work together in a significant way to make sure that the sector itself is better prepared and better supported.
Mm.
And on the other hand, if you're looking at the general public, I already said it's important that we have these awareness campaigns, but they are everywhere. There's also something to be said for education, school education. I think here the cantons also have a role to play in that whole kind of environment. And so, yes, in Switzerland, everybody should be aware and should participate in, making themselves and their organizations more cyber secure. And the administration and the state, they are supporting these efforts. So
Mhm.
and maybe one more aspect that we're having. If you're looking at the implementation projects, how the cyber strategy is being implemented, that's not only the administration itself that implements certain programs or projects or so, but there are many private sector initiatives that are linked to the implementation of the strategy, and they can basically lock themselves into an official monitoring system and be therefore part of a broader initiative to implement the strategy. So again, if you are in Switzerland and you have a program running or a project that kind of touches on implementing the cyber strategy, please have a look at the website of the National Cybersecurity Center and see if you can log in there to be part then of that overall goal of implementing the strategy.
From what I hear, probably could be called as a decentralization, right? As a delegation of the agency to make sure that the different actors also have the areas where they could contribute. So that's
Absolutely.
another inbuilt feature of how the Switzerland sees the implementation of the strategy, the day-to-day work.
Absolutely.
Um, but when it comes to certain deliverables and outcomes,
Mhm.
I wonder how the results are formulated and how different stakeholders might see them. So, what sort of changes can we expect the strategy to bring in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years, how success could be measured, how the different discussions are actually being taking place about when it comes to measuring the success, because I understand it might be really, really again difficult in the current environment.
It's a very, very good question, Nastya. And I've talked to quite a few people who are implementing national cyber strategies in other countries, right? And the measurability and the
Hmm.
showing of success is always a very, very tricky point. And very often you can only take proxy measures to say, yes, we have reached a goal. Um, Having said that, the one of the tasks of the steering committee, NCS steering committee, is to release a report each year to the public, also to the cantons and the federal administration of who of where we are in terms of the implementation. So there is some transparency around that. And what we have been doing in the steering committee is working very hard to making sure we can actually measure where we are, where we're going and if we're going fast enough towards the goals that we have set ourselves. So over the last year, we have made some significant progress in those aspects. We've also built up some KPIs that are currently being implemented and under underlaid with data. We have set up the framework in a way that measurability is actually possible. We are not completely there yet. We are still improving on this, but that is actually one of the or was one of the main focus points for our work for last year, is making sure we can actually say that, you know, all the efforts that we are doing, are these the right efforts, and are they enough?
But I want to probably zoom out to the international context, and you formulated this very, I would say, sharply among the challenges at the national level: money, focus, and politics, which I think can be relevant and applicable to international context if we will look at this. And I wonder, how does Switzerland's approach fit into this broader international context of cyber strategies and global governance? Specifically, when I look at the UN cyber negotiations, which will resume next month already, where Switzerland is, I think, expected to play an active role, which it did in the past. And how do these negotiations feed back into the national strategy, if they did at all?
Very good point. So, first of all, Switzerland is very, you know, networked and integrated with international organizations. I think that is one of our strengths as a, you know, as a small country. We have to be, in a way, and we have a, as I said earlier, a long tradition also for that. And that is not only, you know, the international Geneva, but it goes far beyond that. Now, in 2026, Switzerland is also the chair of the OSCE, and is going to organize a large cyber conference. So there you see Switzerland is very active in that field. You've mentioned the UN and negotiations, and yes, Switzerland has been active in the past. And I'm sure that Switzerland will play an active role in the future as well, as one of our strategic goals is a leading role in international cyber diplomacy, right? So it's that actually plays right into our strategy. And I think the Geneva Dialogue, which is basically a dialogue platform, that is also sponsored by the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, is one of the, you know, one of the kind of showcases where Switzerland can actually play a role, and, you know, go forward with good intentions and good discussions to make sure that these, you know, the UN norms or the confidence building measures, they can be implemented in a way that everybody can contribute.
If you also already mentioned that particular aspect, so you see this link between the Swiss cyber strategy and the thinking when it comes to the roles responsibilities of the private sector, critical infrastructure operators, technology providers, right, in the implementation of the agreed cyber norms. So they clearly different linkages that might be also studied and discussed further. And this is what also we're primarily interested to look at within Geneva Dialogue. The Switzerland example is a really interesting example to look as example that we highlighted within build features such as the whole of society approach, the level of decentralization, and the opportunity for different actors to be part of the process, not only how it is implemented, but also how it is shaped. Um, yeah, I think this the continuous framework with no end date, which provides you sort of the stability operating in the highly turbulent environment, again, which we are all in these days. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. I really hope that it also would be helpful to many stakeholders that will listen to our discussion. We will share the links where the listeners can find further information about the Swiss cyber strategy. And if anything to add at the concluding remarks.
Yeah, maybe because we were just discussing that, right? I think the work we're doing in the Geneva Dialogue, it starts from, you know, the norms and confidence building measures, what states should be doing. And here
Yeah.
we kind of try to find out and discuss what is actually the role of civil society and business, and, you know, to to support that. What should they be do? In contrast there to our strategy is this is already baked in. So I think the starting point for the discussions is a little bit different, but that doesn't make one or the other better, right? So it's I think it's great to have this North Star, and there you have this kind of stable set of UN norms. You have the stable set of confidence building measures, which is something to strive for. And then on the other hand, in a strategy like Switzerland, you have these stable or relatively stable strategic goals and the vision, and this is the North Star where all the stakeholders can be working actively towards too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is a good point, indeed. I think also the norms themselves, they heavily depend on the national practice, how it has been developed, how the different UN member states evolve the strategies, evolve the sort of the behavior to ensure cybersecurity at a national level, and also to project this in international relations. So somehow I think it's really sort of the dual mutual relationships between the norms and the national practice. They depend on each other, as you highlighted. Thank you so much again. We hopefully that will be also an interesting discussion to our listeners. We will continue to study different examples further in our current work to better understand the roles, responsibilities of various actors in building cyber resilience and dealing with cyber stability and the relevant challenges. And today's conversation, at least to me, highlighted that the strength of the national cybersecurity strategy will be measured not by what it promises, but how it ultimately holds under the uncertainty, deals with interdependence, these real world trade-offs. And I think this strategy that we discussed provides really interesting ingredients for success. So again, thank you so much, Maya, for unpacking this, for navigating us through this process. And we hope to get back soon with the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nastya. It was a pleasure.